On today's Join Us in France, the first part of a trip report on Paris with two dads and a child, and also some words of caution about the upcoming strikes in June 2016 in France. To open the show today, I wanted to thank listeners who use our Amazon link before they shop on Amazon, which you can find either on joinusinfrance.com/support or on the show notes on your phone. It's really helping the show pay its monthly bills. Thank you very much. Thank you also, Michael Groves, for your donation in the tip jar, the donate button found on the website. Tip your guide, folks. It helps the guide keep a good attitude. It works in real life, too. Today, I want to answer an important question from Sue on the Join Us in France Facebook page. She says, not a fun topic, but I just read that there is a general strike called for on June 14th. Could you elaborate on what will be affected by this and what those of us that will be in France on holiday on that day should expect? Okay. Even if you're not going to be in France on that day, you should listen to this because it will happen again. It always does. I've mentioned strikes before on episodes 91, 82, 75, 63, 50, and 18. And I don't remember all this because I have a fabulous memory. I don't. But because of the search feature on joinusinfrance.com, the site is getting bloated with wonderful French edutainment. But you can find all sorts of things if you use the search bar. But let me answer this specific question because this is a slightly different question anyway, and it's a very good question. What happens during a general strike in France? To illustrate this, I want to mention a sculpture you can see in Prague called Entropa. It was the commissioned piece by an artist, David Cerny, to mark the 2009 presidency of the European Union by the Czech Republic. This sculpture represents ideas that the artist has about other EU countries. And for France, the artist shows an outline of the beautiful country of France with the word grève written all over it on a white sheet. June and September are particularly good months for strikes because the weather is good and more people are likely to come out and protest, and folks aren't on vacation either. Why September? Because that's the rentrée, when life is supposed to start up again after our collective summer adventures, and the strikers love to disrupt. That's why they do what they do. French culture is infused with people all over the country who believe that strikes solve problems, or at least are an important form of self-expression. In France, we have a long history of strikes. Most of them are small, a few are huge. Both the law and the police protect the rights of strikers, unless, of course, they start throwing rocks and breaking store windows, in which case the police may get orders to charge at the strikers, but that's rare overall. I mean, you can bet that when it happens, it's going to be all over the news, but it doesn't happen that often. You have to understand that unions call for strikes all the time in France. There's hardly a day that goes by that somebody somewhere isn't on strike. But most of the time, it's of no consequence whatsoever. Sometimes just, even if it's a strike for a big union, say the one that comes to mind because they go on strike all the time, the SNCF, so the trains, well, sometimes only a few people strike, and so what they end up doing is they cut off a few trains from the schedule. But, I mean, you can still take the train, right? It's the same with the metro, or RATP in Paris also goes on strike on a regular basis. But what that means really most of the time is a slowdown of services. A general strike is a different animal, because it could mean that a lot of things may get disrupted. The potential for disruption is huge, but what's really going to happen? Well, nobody knows until that day. It might mean that 25% of trains are canceled. It might mean that 50% of trains are canceled. It might mean that 90% of trains are canceled. We don't know before it happens. So what I'm trying to say is most of these strikes, and by most I mean the vast majority of them, like 80% or something, they are a pain. You don't get as many services as normal, and so there's bigger crowds, and people are unhappy because they can't get home or they can't get to work or something. But if you are patient, you can still travel on strike day. Now, when it's a general strike, you have to take some precautions. And here are some things that I recommend you do, is specifically for that June 14th day. Rule number 1, and that applies all the time. If you ever hear or see a large gathering of people and they have loudspeakers and they have big banners, walk the other way. Okay, you never know when a peaceful strike will degenerate. Most of them do not. But as a visitor, you have no reason to be there. There's nothing worth seeing. And, you have to understand that there's this tendency of strikes to go a little bit more violent the last few years. Why does that happen? Have French people become more violent all of a sudden? No, it's just that they've noticed that if the police has to show up, and if there's confrontations with the police, the press covers it. And so they have a, built-in, everybody has an interest in causing ruckus because the press is going to cover it. So that's one part of it. So you should walk away just in case it's really nothing interesting is going on there. It used to be that strikes were nothing but a bunch of people walking the streets with a big old banner. Well, it's become a bit more exciting on account of the press and the instant news and all of that. Rule number 2. You have to avoid getting caught in the strike. And there are some things you can do, which I'm going to list now, to avoid getting caught. The biggest thing that might impact you as a visitor is 1, transportation, and 2, large public institutions. So if there's a strike, it's quite possible that the Louvre is going to be closed because these people are not public employees, but they're semi-quasi-public employees, and they will strike whenever. Same with the Eiffel Tower. So on that day, instead of planning to go to the Louvre or planning to go to something big like that, plan to go to a smaller private museum, which is a lot less likely to strike. For instance, the Chocolate Museum in Paris is a private museum. For instance, the Chocolate Museum in Paris is a private museum. I can't imagine that they would go on strike, even if it's a general strike. So what you have to do is stay away from anything run by government employees or quasi-government employees. So stay away from airports, trains, metros, large public museums, and the post office. Other things that you need to be careful of. On a general strike day, I would stay away from anywhere that has a toll booth. So any autoroute, any freeways around the country. Why is that? Because if a bunch of truckers or taxi drivers decide to block the freeway, they usually block the toll booth, and they will let people through, but just, at snail pace. And it's awful. It can cause traffic jams. You can have 10 kilometers of standstill traffic. It's horrible. It's happened to me before. It's one of the most frustrating things ever. So stay away from anywhere that has tolls, and your GPS should have a setting to help you do that. I would also try to stay away from the belt routes around cities if you can. And the other thing I would do is fill up with gas if you're renting a car before the strike. What is not going to be on strike are hotels, restaurants, grocery stores, even small corner stores. It's just getting around that's difficult. So one thing that you could use if you need to get around that day is, of course, buses. I did a whole episode on buses, and you can check that out. It's episode 75. Buses rarely go on strike. What could happen, though, is that the bus drivers are unable to move the buses because taxi drivers or somebody else is blocking them. That has happened so many times. And when it's a general strike, it's possible that it will happen again. So what do you have left? Well, you have this wonderful service in France, which I have never used myself, but I hear good things. It's something called BlaBlaCar. And I'll put a link to that on the website. It's ride sharing. So if you really have to move that day, if you have to go from A to B that day, use BlaBlaCar or rent your own car and avoid freeways. That would be my recommendation. Coming to France on a day when there's a general strike is not the funnest thing you can do. But honestly, it could be nothing. It could just mean that you're going to change your plans for that day, avoid the big venues, walk places instead of take the underground, avoid the freeways, that sort of strategy. It's not like the country is going to come to a standstill. That has not happened in decades. I can't imagine that it would happen this time either. Something major would have to happen for this to go on. It will disrupt your day, but it's not the end of the world. You can totally get around it if you just stay away from most of the shenanigans. I hope that's helpful to you. If you have more tips that you want to share, please go to joinusinfrance.com and add a comment to the episode to share with other people what you would do on top of all of that. And now, on with the episode. 2 dads and a child in Paris. Hello, David, and welcome to Join Us in France.
Hi, Annie. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Ça va très bien.
Ça va bien. Parfait. Parfait. Yes, it's a little bit early for you in New York, isn't it?
It's a little bit early. It's 7:30, but,
the things you do.
Exactly. Not usually a morning person, but anything for you.
Oh, you're so kind. Thank you so much. Okay. Well, thank you for accepting to be on the podcast and also for sending me such wonderful notes. I think we're going to have fun. You had a wonderful time in France. And to remind everybody, the topic of today's show is 2 dads and a child in Paris. And this was, well, you've been to Paris twice, or was it 3 times?
Three times. Three times. The last time was just a day trip. We were there for about 8 hours. We took a day trip from London.
Okay.
And, but yeah, three times.
Excellent.
So it was the 3 of us. It was me. I had never been to Paris. Actually, I'd never been to Europe other than a business trip to London. So before 40 years old, I hadn't ever gone to Europe.
Wow.
So for Michael's 50th, my husband, Michael Tersini, when he turned 50, he decided that what he wanted to do is to start traveling. So we went there for his 50th birthday, which was the first time.
Great.
Zane, our son, was 7 years old at that point, and it kind of kicked off a pattern of traveling for us, which we've kept up. So, we went once for his birthday, and then a couple of years ago, we went a second time and went for a little bit longer.
Yeah.
And then the third time we went for just the day, which was fantastic.
That's wonderful. Okay, yeah, and I love what you talked about your travel philosophy, which I kind of enjoyed. If you don't mind going over that, because I really like that you've thought it through. You like what you want, which is awesome.
Well, what we think is really important, and I think it's what has made traveling with a child really successful for us, is, we don't go traveling to see all of the sites and to go and see all of the museums. What we really do is we really go to just be in the city. And I think that that's made it really easy for us, because, it's as important for us to walk along the Seine and see the houseboats and see the cars parked on top of the houseboats as it is going to the Louvre.
Yeah.
I think it's really important too when you're traveling. Our son was 7 when we started traveling. He's now 11. And, kids can get really pent up. And I think it's really important to do a lot of walking, to be outside as much as possible, to get a lot of fresh air, let them be kids and let them, kind of be crazy.
Yeah.
One of the things that we have found is really cool about Paris is, along the Seine, the city does this really great job of putting all of these great activities on the river.
That's right.
So, going between, say, the Louvre and the Musée d'Orsay, you literally can play ping pong on the riverside.
That's right. Yeah, there's a bunch of I can't remember which bank it is, if it's the right bank or the left bank, but pretty soon both banks are going to be done that way. The cars are not allowed anymore, and you can just walk, and they have games, things for kids to do all along the way. It's really fun, and grown-ups.
It's fantastic. Yeah. It's fantastic. So, a couple of other things that we do to make things easy is, if there's one big thing that we want to do, like the second time that we went in February, and we knew that the weather wasn't going to be great. So we figured that, taking one day and going to a museum was probably okay. Mm-hmm. So we bought our tickets in advance to go to the Louvre. And, but those are the only tickets that we bought because we didn't want to get locked into having to be on a treadmill of, okay, let's go to the Orsay. Now let's go to the Musée Picasso. Now let's go. So what we did was, for the important things, we'll buy our tickets in advance so that, we're not standing in line because that'll kill an entire day.
Yeah.
But for the rest of the time, we just try and keep it loose and gauge, Zane's activity level and what we think he's going to be ready for that day. And so because of that, we haven't done things that a lot of other people do, which is, buy the Paris pass. Mm-hmm. What we do is we make sure that, we stay loose and we do what we think is appropriate for him on a day-to-day basis.
Right. And it sounds like you've always had plenty to do, even if you haven't bought all these, packs of activities and all that. You always found stuff.
Exactly. And I think the important thing to do, too, is to keep in mind that even if you may not have bought your tickets in advance, before leaving the States, you can always get the tickets from your hotel. The hotel, for instance, the day that we went to the Orsay, we bought the tickets from the hotel that morning instead of, trying to stand in that horrible line
right.
to buy them at the museum. So.
Right. Most hotels will offer that kind of service, and that's really good, and I don't know if they charge a little extra, but if they charge €1 extra, so what? It'll save you a long line, so it's
exactly
worth doing. Yeah, it's worth doing. I love also that you point out that your son is not a picky eater.
No, he grew up the two cities in the United States that he's grown up closest to is San Francisco and Manhattan, and he's pretty much lived his entire life going to restaurants. So, he has got a pretty adventuresome palate. So, unfortunately, I'm not going to be the best person to say, okay, well, this is the best place to get kids food, because he will have steak tartare. He will try escargot. Yeah. He loves mussels. And, but I will have to say that actually being adventuresome, his, traveling has actually even broadened his already good palate, because
it's great.
When he's traveling, it's funny. He'll eat things in Europe that he won't eat here. It's funny because we've actually ordered escargot in the United States, and he's kind of been a little picky about it. And I said, well, Zane, you eat this all the time. And he says, yeah, Dad, but I eat that in France. I don't eat that here.
He's got his limits.
Exactly.
That's great. Yeah, but just to give you a little perspective on feeding kids in French restaurants. Most French restaurants will offer a hamburger, either with a bun and everything. It used to be that hamburgers in France didn't have the bun. They would just serve you the piece of beef and fries on the side. Usually they would give you a piece of fruit, and and that was the typical French restaurant meal. They've now, for kids, and now they've gone a little beyond that, but most kids will find something at a French restaurant that they can eat, unless you're at a really expensive restaurant that has stars and all that. But right. Even there, they'll probably have something for children.
Well, I'll have to say that that's one of the things that we have done as well is the things that I wouldn't say compromise, but the things that you do when you have your child with you. We don't try and go to fancy restaurants. We don't try and go to Michelin star restaurants. We go to local cafes, and I think the food is a lot more approachable for kids. And then they also get the benefit of, again, being outside and getting to people watch, which is one of the best things about being in Paris.
That's right. Okay, so tell us about your first day in Paris and what you did and all of that good stuff.
Sure. So the first day we flew in and we were staying at the Hotel Mayfair, which is just off the Place de la Concorde. It's about a half block off of the Rue de Rivoli. And we flew in and, we always take the red eyes when we fly to Europe. So we usually get to the airport to Charles de Gaulle around 7 o'clock in the morning, 7:30. Right. Much like this morning. And, so, everybody's tired when we first get there, but, the first day was really amazing. One of the best things for me, traveling with my son is, I'm seeing things for the first time, but I'm seeing things as an adult. And what's great is I always get the immediate filter of seeing it through a child's eyes, because just as I'm trying to process what I'm seeing, he'll usually vocalize what he's seeing as well. And it's so great to see those two different ways of looking at things. And I bring this up because, for anybody who's ever taken the car ride in from De Gaulle, it's a long trip. And what's funny is Paris doesn't really become Paris until you go underneath the ring road. And, you're coming through and you're going through all of the suburbs of Paris, and you're thinking to yourself, wow, this is not at all what I thought I was traveling
awful.
to.
Why did I come here?
I was trying to be very kind, but it's really pretty nasty.
Yeah.
And but I read the time that we came in behind Montmartre. And what's funny is it's like you really are wondering where am I? And then all of a sudden you see the back of the Sacré-Cœur.
Yeah.
And I always liken it to, when you go underneath the ring road, it's like being backstage and then all of a sudden being in front of the stage and seeing what Paris is. And so we, go underneath the highway, and then all of a sudden you're in what you think is going to be Paris. And about that time that I made that realization, Zane kind of perked up in the back of the car, and he said, Dad, look at all these shops. And I said, well, it's not unlike Manhattan. This is, we've got stores in New York as well. And he said, no, Dad, this is different. And I thought that was like a really cool realization to see his filter on that. But we got there the first day, and we got to the Hotel Mayfair. We had a little breakfast.
Like the hotel?
It was good. I actually liked the second hotel that we stayed at, which was the Pavillon de la Reine, because it was in the Marais, and it was just off of the Place de Vosges. And I really enjoyed getting up in the morning. You almost felt like you were staying in an apartment at that hotel. Mm-hmm. The Hotel Mayfair I liked. It's very convenient. It's literally a block and a half from the Place de la Concorde.
Yep.
So it's right in the center of everything. It's another 2 blocks, I think, from the Place Vendôme. So it's a really fantastic location to be. And we, enjoyed the hotel. And as a family, it was good. We stayed in a suite. So, Zane had a pull-out bed on the sofa. We were able to have a little bit of privacy because we had, a separate bedroom. Mm-hmm. So it was really nice. Mm-hmm. But, the first morning, we really needed to wake up. So we walked across the Rue de Rivoli into the Tuileries Gardens.
Yep.
And it was just fantastic. At the time, Zane was taking martial arts classes. And it was so cute to see him in the garden in the morning doing his martial arts moves, his karate moves, in the park. And, we spent the first good hour, almost 2 hours, I think, just walking the garden. There are these really great concession stands where they have really great coffee. They do this amazing thing. It was still fairly early morning. It was a little drizzly the first morning that we were there. So there weren't a lot of people in the park. And we got him, he was hungry, so we got him an ice cream cone in the park. And they do this really beautiful thing that I had never seen before, where they actually take a scoop and they will cut off pieces of ice cream, and they start arranging them on the cone so that it's actually in the shape of a rose.
Oh.
And it was so beautiful to see, and such a great, first thing to see, in Paris. And, we were there, it was late October, and, I'm a huge garden person, and the gardens in the Tuileries are just fantastic. The landscaping is beautiful. I personally like late season gardens because, everything's kind of almost spent, but not quite.
Yeah.
And it was just fantastic to walk the entire length, to go, when you get closer to the end, that's close to the Place de la Concorde, there's a beautiful pond where kids were playing. So we did that just to kind of wake up and to get everybody's blood going. And we had some friends who had lived in Paris, and they had recommended to us that, you know, if we wanted to kind of cut our teeth going to museums that are very approachable museum, and a good museum for kids was the Orangerie. Uh-huh. And so we went to the Orangerie the first morning. You know, we hadn't bought tickets in advance, but we went early. And it just at opening, and really it only took, I think, about maybe 5 to 10 minutes to get in. It was fantastic.
Yeah, so that's really not bad at all.
No, not bad at all. And it's a museum too that I would recommend going to for kids, because it has the two Monet rooms. So they're the two oval rooms that have floor to ceiling Monet murals of water lilies. And they're fantastic. I mean, it's a big hit. It's something that I think is a very impression. You know, I was going to say makes a big impression.
It does. That's the right way to put it.
But no, it's really, you know, you have to judge. I would have loved to have spent more time in those two rooms. You know, there are benches in the center, and you're able to sit and really stare at them. You know, Zane wasn't up for that. He kind of went in and was like, okay, cool. You know, water lilies, whatever.
Yeah, water lilies, huh?
But it was still, it was great to see. And what I didn't realize about that museum is, we did end up going downstairs, and the collection that's downstairs, in addition to, the water lilies, is just really incredible. I mean, there's so many big hits of the early modern movement that are downstairs that I had no idea. So as somebody who, you know, studied a lot of art, I was really, you know, the hair was standing up on my arms being in the same room as some of the amazing paintings that are there.
Cool.
The one thing that you do get an opportunity to do at the Orangerie is it's actually associated with the Musée d'Orsay. So you have the ability to not only get the ticket to the Orangerie, but you can also buy a dual pass so that you can go to the Musée d'Orsay as well.
That's great.
So that's a good way to actually do both of those. So we spent as much time as we could at the Orangerie, and then we just went back out and went down to the river and just started walking east towards Notre Dame. Right.
And, now remember, keep in mind, everybody, you guys are very jet lagged, and you haven't slept well, and you're tired, so you're really, you know, you keep going, which is great, but it's not that easy. I mean,
well, it's not easy, but one of the things that we do, which I would highly recommend if you do a jet lag, is we always barrel into the first day like we had slept there. Yeah. Because if you don't, you really run the risk of getting to Europe, being tired and crashing, and, you know, basically sleeping through the first day. So we always, you know, try and hit the road, even if it's a gentle day, even if it's just walking, even if it's just going to cafes, so that you kind of get, you know, the feel of the city. We try and stay up, and we try and do, you know, what we consider to be, you know, waking up type activities. So,
be out,
you know,
in the sun, walk around. That's the way to do it. Yeah.
And I've always read that one of the easiest ways to get over jet lag is to try and get up with the sunrise. Yeah. And which is what we try and do. So we did do a lot of walking that first day, and we were walking down, you know, you can walk either above or you can walk down by the river in the Seine. Right. And
you have two levels. You have the street level and the river level. Well, not quite river level, but you're a few feet above the river, or you were on the sidewalk along where the cars go.
Right, exactly. So we went down by the river. And it was the cutest thing, because you go underneath the bridges, and a lot of the bridges have these enormous iron rings, which I imagine were to tie up boats at a certain point. Yeah. And Zane was using them like a jungle gym, and literally was you know, skipping along the river, and at one point just jumped up and down and screamed, "Paris rocks!" And I thought that was like the coolest thing. Just to again see a brand new city through his eyes was really fantastic.
That's great. Yeah, it's great.
So we walked around, and around 11 o'clock, we were getting kind of hungry, so we crossed the bridge. I think we crossed the Artists' Bridge, which is where they used to have all of the love locks, which have now been taken down because they were...
Des Arts, yep.
at the Pont des Arts. It was because the Lovelocks, for anybody who's never been to Paris, there was a tradition of putting a lock. If you were in love with somebody, you would put your name on a lock and attach it to the bridge.
Yeah.
And it started pulling down the railing.
Yeah.
So the last time that we were there, the bridge actually was covered in plywood because they're trying to keep people from doing that. But
right.
We did go across the bridge, and we started wandering into the left bank, and just kind of wandered in and found this really great. We never have planned where we're going to eat, so we always try and look for places that look like they're popular and where people are waiting in line, and places that look like they're active. And we found a restaurant called Le Relais de l'Entrecôte, and the first time that we went, I had studied French for 5 years when I was in high school. And then, like many people, had completely forgotten almost all of my French. So the first time that we went, I thought it was going to be, the French master and go and speak French the entire time, which I think I actually did a really fair job of embarrassing myself, because I've never heard so many people say, no, monsieur, let's speak English.
Oh, dear.
So please, can you stop? But we found ourselves at this restaurant, and it was really funny because all of the waitresses basically are dressed as French maids, and
wow.
They, with the black dresses with the white aprons and the hats, and the waitress came up to us and said, what do you want? And I said, well, I haven't even seen the menu yet. And she kind of, was a little huffy with me and handed me this menu. And I looked at the menu, and I couldn't read anything. It was all in script. And as it turns out, what it was actually the wine list.
Oh.
And what it is at this restaurant, the only thing that they serve is steak frites. And I didn't realize that. And so I said, I don't know what I want. And she looked at me and she said, Monsieur, medium ou rare. And I said, medium or rare. And I said, medium rare, please. And she said, no, monsieur, medium ou rare. Like that was the only choices. It's like, no, there is no medium rare. It's
don't mess with me.
Exactly. Don't mess with me. And so I said, rare. And she just said, okay, bon, bien, and went away. But it was funny. We were all kind of jet lagged. We were sitting there. We were waiting for our steaks to come. And we look over, and, Zane's tugging on my sleeve. He's like, Dad. I was like, what? He's like, there's a dog in the restaurant. And we looked over. And sure enough, the table next to us, they had a small, lap dog that was eating with them, and just being in Paris, seeing the different way of people eating at a restaurant was really special. The food was perfect, by the way. It was the first time I'd ever had a salad in Europe, and it's just, there's something about being in Europe, the produce is so amazing and tastes so fresh, and just a simple salad with nothing but a vinaigrette and walnuts on it is like this amazing thing to eat. And they come.
Let me guess. Did the steak come with a sauce?
It did. It did.
Yeah. So this is a thing that they do a lot in France. They have one in Toulouse, and in Toulouse it's just called l'Entrecôte. They have one in Montpellier. They have one in Bordeaux. This might be, since it's called Le Relais de l'Entrecôte, it might be a kind of wannabe, they might have copied one another. I don't know who copied whom, but you just walk in, you tell them how you like your meat and what color wine you want.
Exactly.
Much,
Exactly. And it's interesting because they bring the steak out, and they basically will plate it at the table for you.
Yep.
And then they take it away and they put it on a sideboard, and they keep it they have hot. Exactly. And then they come back, and it's a complete meal. You go in, there is this, you start off with a salad, you have a steak, and then they end up with a dessert it's basically prix fixe. It's all included in the bill.
Exactly. And in Toulouse it's like 16 euros without wine, and you don't get to choose the dressing on your salad or anything. They just, they serve the same meal to everybody. For dessert, you do get a choice though. Did you at that place?
We did. We actually chose not to have dessert. But yes, that was the only choice that you got at the end, other than the wine list that I couldn't read. That was
Yeah, in Toulouse, when they have foreigners, they just bring them 2 or 3 bottles, and they just go on this one, or this one, and it's like let's keep it simple. Because it's the kind of place where they serve a lot of people. And I mean, the one in Toulouse anyway, there's always a line, and it's delicious, but you know what you're going to get. It's going to be the same meal every time. And the sauce is really good. And I've tried many times to reproduce it at home, and I can't. And that's just how it is. There's entire websites and forums where people discuss how to make that sauce, and nobody can...
Well, that's a good tip. I'm actually going to look that up as soon as we get off the phone.
So that's a fun happenstance that you just happened to go to that restaurant. It has an attitude. It's a restaurant with an attitude. I like it.
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I will have to say you did mention really quickly the line. Because we had gone early, we pretty much were able to get in. There wasn't much waiting. By the time we left, the line, excuse me, the line was actually pretty extreme. So just like with everything else, I found that I don't know if it's tourists or just European time, but the earlier you go, the better it is getting through lines. Excuse
correct. Me. That's correct. That's right. People in this type of restaurant, you have to show up right at noon. I don't know if they start seating people at 11:30. Maybe some places will. In Toulouse, they don't. But if you show up at 1, you're going to be waiting till 30, 40 minutes to even be seated. So it's and they close at 2:30. So they stop admitting anybody at around 2, and by 2:30 everybody's out. So
you go.
It's kind of a when you go, that's what you get. People need to know that they're not going to change that restaurant. I've heard people argue that they didn't want any dressing on their salad. No, we don't do salad with no dressing. Okay, just
exactly.
No. So anyway, interesting. All right, very good. So that's a good first morning. You haven't gone to your hotel yet, have you?
No. Actually, I think what we did is at that point we did go back to the hotel because we were at that point check-in time. So we went back to the hotel. I think we rested for a little bit of time. It's always good to take breaks during the day with kids to let them kind of reorient themselves. I'll have to say I've seen Jersey Shore and Scooby-Doo dubbed into both French and Italian at this point. But we go back to the room and you're flipping through the channels and it's that's what's on TV. It's Scooby-Doo. So you've got Shaggy saying, it's Scooby. It's a real treat.
Yeah.
So, we went back, we rested for a little bit, and then we decided to walk the Champs-Élysées. It's something that, having studied French, was something that I had always wanted to see. I read a little Baudelaire when I was in college.
Yeah.
And so we wanted to see the Champs-Élysées. And I will actually have to say that the Champs-Élysées was probably my only disappointment.
Yeah.
It's obviously a beautiful boulevard. But, at this point, almost all the stores are national or international chain stores.
Yep.
So, to me, it's much like going up and down Fifth Avenue where, yes, it used to be the street that you would shop on. But at this point, have you seen a Zara? Have you been to a Banana Republic?
Yeah.
And one thing that you also don't realize is you always see in images the shot of the Champs-Élysées, looking straight down the center of it, looking at the Arc de Triomphe. Mm-hmm. But when you're there, it's beautifully landscaped, but there is a double row of trees between the sidewalk and the street. So, when you're on the Champs-Élysées, what you really are experiencing is the sidewalk between the trees and the shops. You don't ever really get that vista that you always see in the movies.
Yeah.
So
right, because when they shoot movies, obviously they clear it up and they do whatever they want.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. And the other thing that could be getting better slightly is that in the future, and I think this started this May, and every first Sunday of the month, the Champs-Élysées are going to be no cars.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So, yeah, if there are no cars, it'll be better, I think. Let's wait and see.
I would agree. Agree.
Let's wait.
But, I also got a sense, there are some street performers that are there, people with boom boxes and dancing and stuff like that, which is fun. But for me, I'm always paranoid to stop places like that because I'm always anticipating that there's probably a pickpocket that's working, the backside of the crowd. So, we stopped for a little while and watched it, and it was a great experience. But really,
but not your favorite.
Not my favorite. But we did end up going to the Arc de Triomphe, which the views from the top are absolutely fantastic. Mm-hmm. My one just thing to put out there was they have an elevator, but the elevator didn't seem to either be working that day or didn't seem to be operating. So you really have to be committed to want to do the spiral staircase, which is fine, but.
Yeah, another thing that happens a lot in France is that they have an elevator, but they just reserve it for people who are in wheelchairs or that need it, need it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, but we went to the top. The views are actually spectacular, and that was really kind of the first time because it had kind of been an overcast day that first day. Getting to the top of the Arc de Triomphe and looking out and seeing the Eiffel Tower was just amazing. Yeah. The views are incredible.
Yeah, it's a good place to look about.
So we came down the Arc de Triomphe, mm-hmm. and then obviously you're there at the Star, the Étoile, mm-hmm. and so we actually cut back in and walked the Avenue Haussmann, which is beautiful.
Boulevard Haussmann, yes.
I will have to say that I think that's about the time that Seine started burning out, and as beautiful as it is, the architecture does become a bit monotonous.
Right, it's all the same, yeah.
It's all the same. You've already covered this, but for people who may not know the history of Paris, during the time of Napoleon III, he hired a man named Haussmann, and they actually cut the boulevards in all simultaneously. So all of the architecture that's along the boulevards is very much the same because it was all basically built at the same time.
Yep.
Which is one of the reasons why I think Paris is unique, is there's no place that I've ever been to other than Paris that's so uniform from one part of the city to the next.
Yep.
It's fantastic to see.
Oh, and it was very funny because last weekend I was in Glasgow with family, and one of them has studied art and architecture, and she was commenting all the time that in Glasgow there's no continuity, and it's all over the place, and that Edinburgh is a little better, but it's a typical French person, like this all over the place, I can't handle it.
For us, welcome to Manhattan.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's a complete mess, but so we were pretty tired after doing the boulevard. And so what we did was we decided that rather than try and go out with everybody being jet lagged and tired, that it would be better just to have dinner at the hotel. Mm-hmm. And so rather than doing room service, Michael went downstairs and asked the concierge where he could just get some bread and a bottle of wine and some cheeses and some charcuterie. And it's really funny because he actually had to argue with the concierge for a little bit because the concierge kept saying, well, why would you want to do that? You're in Paris, go out. And but finally he explained to them, he's like, because we're tired and we have a little kid. And so what they told him to do is to actually go to Monoprix, which is basically like a French version of Target. They have some clothes, they have some basically pharmacy items, and then you go downstairs and there's basically a full grocery store.
That's right.
So, he came back with some, fantastic foie gras, some really great cheeses,
Ooh,
and we
that's
just
quite
ended
a picnic you're having here.
Exactly, picnic in the hotel room.
Yep.
But it's actually kind of now become our tradition, is we usually always have dinner at the hotel, so everybody can just get ready for bed. But around 8:00, we were really just ready for bed.
Yeah.
We had it. But Michael actually came and said, "Come on, guys, we're a block and a half from the Place de la Concorde. Let's just go down and say goodnight to the Eiffel Tower."
Oh.
So we walked the block and a half, and as we got there, on the hour, the Eiffel Tower actually starts sparkling. They have all these LED lights that are on it. So we get down there. It really had been the first time all day that the weather had really lifted. We could see the tower, and Zane just looked at us and said, "Can we go? Can we go?" And we're like, it's 8:00, but let's do it. So, we crossed over the bridge and we started walking up the left bank. And to this day, it's this image I'll always have is him being so happy and skipping up the river and having him, splash in the puddles and seeing all the lights, reflected in the sidewalk, and just how happy he was to be there.
That's just wonderful.
That first night of being underneath the Eiffel Tower. And, I don't think that there's any way that you can actually ever explain the first time that you're underneath the tower just how gigantic it is.
I know. People don't realize. They've seen it so much in movies. They've seen it in reproductions, whatever. It is ginormous. It is really, really big. And
it's one of those things too that even though we're from New York and we obviously have walked past the Empire State Building and One World and all the really tall towers in New York, they don't seem as tall as the Eiffel Tower does because the Eiffel Tower sits in the middle of the Champ de Mars, so it's totally just by itself. And I also think that being able to look up through it,
and you see through it. That's what I was going to say. Yeah.
And also there's like a false perspective because of the curve of it. When you're standing underneath it, it's almost like this vortex or something that you can, I actually got vertigo. I felt like I was going to get, plucked off of like gravity was going to stop or something.
Yes.
It's amazing.
It makes that sort of impression on people. And it's true when you stand next to the huge buildings in Manhattan, they are taller, I'm sure, than the Eiffel Tower, many of them, but you don't get that impression. And I think it's because you don't see through. The Eiffel Tower, your line of sight, it's like it's never ending.
Yeah, it's just amazing.
Yeah.
And, it started to drizzle also as well. And I think that the combination of the rain coming down and, kind of like looking up, Zane was like, let's go. I was like, you know what, Dad's vertigo's actually acting up at this point. Why don't we go back to the hotel and we'll do this tomorrow. So we decided that we were going to do it tomorrow, took a taxi back, which again, I would highly recommend to anybody who travels with a kid that, once they start tuckering out, just like call it a night, get them back to the hotel.
Well, especially on a first day. You guys had a very, very full day for your first day. So yeah.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. So the second day, because we were anticipating some jet lag, what we thought we would do is to get a better sense of the city is we went on one of the tour boats of the Seine. So when you go down to the Eiffel Tower, there are two sides. The right bank, which is the northern side of the river, is the boat that I think everybody knows, which is the Bateau Mouche.
Yep.
We actually went across to the left bank, and there are at least two different boats that are on that side of the river. There's the Vedette de Paris, which is what we took.
Yep.
And then the second time that we were in Paris, we took the Bateau Parisien. I would definitely recommend the Vedette de Paris. One of the reasons being is they actually have a full cafe that's inside the boat. And they actually make fresh crepes. Actually on the boats with Nutella. So,
nice.
it was fantastic. And, there was a woman there and she's making all these crepes, and we came up and we ordered one, and she, instead of taking one out of the stack, she actually made one fresh for us, there. So it was really fantastic because, Zane could kind of sleep it off. He got a crepe. We got, you get the wonderful, boat tour.
Yeah.
And it's a really good, I think, second day thing to do in the morning to kind of wake up and kind of ease out of your jet lag.
Yeah, it's also a good thing to do on the first day. Some other people that I've had on the show have done that on the first day, but it's really cool to know that Vedette de Paris does the breakfast on board. That's really good. I didn't realize.
It was fantastic.
Yeah, I didn't realize it did that.
The second one, the Bateau Parisien, was a fine tour, but they only have vending machines on board, and that as an American was quite an experience as well, because you have things that are similar to what you would expect in America, but the potato chips, for instance, are roast chicken flavor. Instead of nacho cheese, they have the poulet rôti potato chips, which
those are delicious.
I love them. Zane loved them. I loved them. Michael took one and he was like, "Oh my God, this is disgusting. How are you guys eating these?"
He's a vegetarian, maybe.
No, definitely not. But not the roast chicken potato chips.
That was one too far.
One too far.
Yeah.
So we did the boat ride, and then we came back, and our plan then was to go to the Eiffel Tower.
Mm-hmm.
So we went to the Eiffel Tower. Would not, that was clearly a mistake, because if you go to the Eiffel Tower without tickets in advance, I mean, it's a nightmare. The lines are crazy long.
Yes.
Even in the morning, they're just crazy long. So we were trying
2 lines. You're going to have the line to buy the tickets and then the line to get onto the elevator
itself.
Yes.
And so we were actually looking around trying to decide whether or not we wanted to bear the lines. And while we were kind of wandering around, I looked over and there was this what looked like a street performer, but like a really scruffy street performer. This guy comes out of the crowd and he's got this clown mask on, but it's this clown mask that only comes to his nose. And I was like, wow, that's the saddest kind of excuse for a street performer I've ever seen. So he comes up and he's kind of like doing this dance around us. And I look over and he's got both of his hands on Michael's watch and is taking his watch off of his wrist. I was like, Michael, your watch. And Michael pulled his arm back, and then this guy did this little dance and just kind of disappeared back to the crowd.
Just dancing. Never mind me.
Just dancing. But it was like, wow, that was really crazy.
Yeah, that's awful.
Yeah. So we decided, close brush. Let's not do the Eiffel Tower. It actually spooked Zane a little bit.
Of course.
He didn't want to go back to the Eiffel Tower.
Yeah.
But the second time that we were in Paris, we did it what I would consider to be the right way. And what we did was you can book a tour that's called Paris Behind the Scenes, Eiffel Tower Behind the Scenes.
Nice.
And what I didn't know is there is an underground bunker that was used during World War II that's underneath the Champ de Mars, which is the field that is just beyond the Eiffel Tower.
Yes.
It's a military field.
Mm-hmm.
And
Champ de Mars was the military school is right there. Yeah.
Exactly. And so you have this behind the scenes tour, and what you do is you basically wait. They tell you to wait at the bust of Gustave Eiffel that's underneath the Eiffel Tower.
Right.
Your tour guide meets you. Mm-hmm. You walk out to the Champ de Mars and you go down into this World War II bunker, mm-hmm. which is really fantastic. And what it is it's actually they don't take you into the actual studios because they're, believe it or not, still classified. But there are these television studios and radio studios that are underneath the field, and it's actually where they did all of their broadcasting, military broadcasting during World War II.
Nice.
And apparently they were active all the way up to the 1970s. And they show you this illustration, and apparently during World War II there was this huge wire that came from the very top of the Eiffel Tower all the way down and strung to this bunker that's underneath, and they used the Eiffel Tower as a radio broadcast because it was so tall that they could actually broadcast all over France, military operations.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
What's really interesting is there's this hunk of iron that's underneath. It's almost like a mock-up of the tower, and what they have on it is the paint colors of the original paint scheme of the Eiffel Tower. And what I didn't realize until we had gone is that when the Eiffel Tower was first built, it was supposed to be a golden tower. Mm-hmm. And it's before they actually illuminated it with electrical lights. So the tower itself was painted 3 different colors. It was basically crimson at the base, and then it went to orange, and then it went to gold at the top. And they actually have this hunk of the tower that's underneath in the Champ de Mars, and you actually get to see what the original color of the tower was, which is completely fascinating.
That sounds really good, yeah. And you provided a link to that tour, so I'll have it on the website where you can look at that tour for yourself if you wish.
Well, the other really good thing about it too is then the tour guide takes you and you get bumped to the beginning of the line to get up the elevator. So you basically cut the line, which is awesome.
Yeah.
And before you go up the elevator to go up to the second level, which is where they eventually take you, they take you downstairs to where the elevator room is. Mm-hmm. And the elevator room, it's like all of these huge gears and wheels that are, they're like 10 feet, 15 feet across, and they've got all the cabling for all of the elevators, and the entire thing is spinning. They have these enormous pistons that are actually driving the elevators that are underground that are literally the length of a football field.
Wow.
And you get to see all the mechanics of the Eiffel Tower and what makes it, tick.
Wow. I need to do that. I need to do that.
It's amazing. It's amazing to see.
Yeah, yeah. I would really enjoy that because I kind of like the engineering behind it anyway,
Well, it's beautiful. It's as beautiful as the tower itself. Everything is color coded, and so everything's bright green or bright orange or bright yellow, and it's just everything about it. It's gorgeous.
Awesome, awesome, very nice. That's a great recommendation.
So definitely one of the hits for us.
Yeah, your son liked that, right?
Yeah, he absolutely loved it.
Yeah,
it was fantastic. It's like such a great thing to do. Especially with a boy. Not to be sexist, but boys typically like mechanics and stuff like that. So it was for him to be down there was just like, oh my god, this is so cool. And then they take you up to the second level. And I, with my acrophobia, couldn't actually leave the enclosed area.
Oh, wow.
So I let Michael and Zane go, and they went out to the edge, and I tried not to actually look to see them against the railing. Because it's funny, there's something about going up the elevators in the Eiffel Tower that I don't think you realize, but the elevators are huge. They're actually the size of a good sized room, and they're 2 stories and glass. And when you go up what feels like you're going up backwards, and you don't just go straight up. You actually sweep with the curve of the tower itself. It's a really weird sensation. I have to say. So I'd do it again, but
Yeah, but you didn't. You're afraid of heights, so
yeah, I'm afraid of heights, and it was a good opportunity to have something that my son could make fun of me for.
That makes sense.
So, but getting back to the first trip, one of the things that we also did the second day was we went to Notre Dame, and we also went to Sainte-Chapelle, and one of the things that I would recommend to try and do for parents, if you're going to go, or for anybody really, the day that you try and go to Notre Dame is once a week. There's a flower market and a bird market that's actually on the Ile de la Cité. And it's such a cool thing to see. There's all these beautiful flowers, and they're cage upon cage upon cage of all of these exotic birds that are there. It's almost like an outdoor pet store.
Yeah. Yep.
And so that was something that we definitely enjoyed seeing.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So,
but your kid would probably wanted a bird.
Oh yeah, he was like, hey, let's get that one. It's like, dude, there's something called customs and something called quarantine, and I don't think that the bird's gonna make it.
Yeah.
But you definitely had that conversation. So,
yes.
But again, it's kind of trying to mix up being in the city and seeing the city with actually seeing the sights as well.
Mm-hmm. Sounds good.
Yep. So after we saw Notre Dame, we went across the river back into the left bank, and there's this big plaza that's just on the other side. I think it's St. Michael's, I believe.
Okay. Yep.
The plaza.
Saint Michel. Yep. Saint Michel.
Place Michel.
Yeah.
And the day that we were there was this street performer that was there, and he had 3 torches. And he was sitting and he was juggling fire. And, he'd juggle, the fire, and then he'd put one of the torches on and would balance one of the torches on his nose and, bring people in out of the crowds and, juggle with them with the fire. And so, for a kid, it's just kind of like, oh my God, what is this place where, you've got these scruffy clowns, and then you've got people, juggling fire. It's like it was such a great,
sounds cool. Yeah.
Great experience.
That sounds good.
Had lunch then at Saint-Séverin in the Latin Quarter.
Saint-Séverin, yeah.
And which is actually just across the street from the church of Saint-Séverin. And what was sweet is, we were there when the church bells started chiming. And, to just be in the Latin Quarter and to experience it, have the church bells chiming. There was a man who came out onto his balcony on the 5th floor of the apartment building that was across the way, and it was it's such an amazing place to be.
That's cool. Yeah, it sounds that neighborhood is very nice. So I really think it was a good choice to go have some. I mean, the Latin Quarter. I mean, it's obviously it's awesome.
And it's something that's a little bit different because, as a contrast to the boulevards, I mean, the Latin Quarter is very, very tight.
Mm-hmm.
There are no cars allowed, so it's a pedestrian, area, and it's really where you kind of feel that you can sense more of the Gothic type, aspect of Paris.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Very cool.
So, day 3 was actually Michael's 50th birthday.
Aha.
And we decided to walk from our hotel to Montmartre to go to the Sacré-Cœur,
okay.
Which, if I did it again, would never do it with a 7-year-old. It was a little bit of a long
way, yeah.
It was a long trek. I actually really enjoyed seeing the cathedral. But, they always tell you that some of the best views of Paris are from the top of Montmartre, which is definitely the case. But one of the things that they also don't tell you is it's one of the few places in the city that you actually can't see the Eiffel Tower.
Yes.
Which I thought was really funny because the Eiffel Tower is basically like behind a tree.
Yes. Yeah. It's not ideal. And I remember one of the last times I was there trying to get a glimpse of the Eiffel Tower in between the houses as we were walking back down from the Sacré-Cœur, and we could never do it. It's just, it hides very well. So yeah.
And it's interesting. There's a street that comes up, that you walk up to get to the cathedral, and it's very, very touristy.
Yes, everybody takes the same route, and even if you try to not take that route, it's hard not to because they really want to channel the tourists through that area.
Yes, exactly. On the way back down, we actually got off of it and ended up going through some of the areas that I think now are referred to as Sophie, which is south of Pigalle. Then ducked into a little bakery and had for the first time just by chance a canal, which is
Cannelet,
which is it was amazing. The pastry. I would recommend anybody who goes. You have to actually have a cannelet.
Yeah, they're really good. Yeah.
They're amazing, and I had no idea what they were. I mean, you of course know the croissant, but the cannelet.
Cannelet is a treat from Bordeaux.
Yes.
So we see them all the time in southern France, but you see them everywhere. But they don't look like much, do they? I mean, they don't look like.
Well, they're small. They basically can fit in the palm of your hand, and they're maybe 1.5 inches tall. And there are these little round pastries with flutes on them, and they're caramelized on the outside, so they look like a little donut or something. But when you break them open, it's almost like a custard that's on the inside. It's creamy. It's got huge air pockets in it. It was so funny because I bit into it and turned to Michael and Zane and said, "Okay, guys, you've got to try this." And they're like, "No, we've got our croissants. We don't need this." I was like, "No, you have to eat this.
This is very different, yeah."
And both of them. It's
made of semolina, kind of. It's not a flour; it's a semolina. It's really good. They're hard to make too. You really you gotta practice enough to get the knack for them because the trick is in not overcooking them because you do want the creamy inside.
I'm going to have to try that because I've tried to make them. I've got the pans now, and I've tried to make them twice, and mine are not nearly the way that they should.
Yeah. No, yeah, you have to. I mean, I've tried them just a couple of times. I don't have it perfect yet, so I need to keep trying, which is unfortunate.
Well, keep me posted. I'll keep you posted on mine.
Yeah, excellent.
We'll have a bake off. But so afterwards, we came down, and there was a restaurant that we were trying to find called Frenchy. That's kind of a nouvelle cuisine. It's really, really popular. We had tried to get reservations months in advance of going and couldn't get reservations. And we thought, well, we'll talk to our concierge at our hotel and see if they could get reservations. And they actually said, they were like, "You're crazy." They're like, they don't even answer their phones. They're so busy. So we had this idea that maybe if we stopped in, we could maybe get a table. As I understand now, there's actually a wine bar that is waiting list only that's across the street, but we were never able to find it. But what we did find was this really
crazy. A wine bar waiting list only? What?
Yeah. Yeah. So you go up and you put your name on a sheet of paper and you wait to get into the wine bar.
That's crazy. I would never put up with that. There's so many wine bars in France. You don't have to. Why do you want that one? Like, have another one.
It's supposedly very, very, very good.
Well, but what it is mostly is very popular.
Well, yes, and it gets a lot of international.
And the wine is the same, honestly. Yes. Like, they're going to open bottles of wine, and the wine is going to... Anyway.
Well, it's funny when you talk about the wine, too, because that's one of the things that, when we went to the Monoprix, that our concierge had told us. They're like, look, if you're in Europe and or you're in France and you spend over €5 on a bottle of wine, you're crazy.
Yeah, yeah.
Because there's like, all the wine is good. You're in France. Like, there's not bad wine. So,
between 5 and 10, you're going to be, like, in it.
Perfect. Right.
Yeah.
So we ended up, though, having lunch at this like really, cute cafe called the, Taverne, Arbre Sec, which is the dry tree. And it's actually become one of our favorite places. So every time that we're in Paris, we always go back. And it's, I'd say it's nothing special, but it is special because it is just it's about a block off the Rue de Rivoli, so it's very convenient to the Louvre and all of the stuff that's in that area.
Yeah,
and it's so cute because it's basically just it's on a corner and it's all French doors that open, and on the interior it's basically just the bar, and then all of the tables are on the sidewalk. There's a beautiful fountain that's across the street that's actually built into the building that's across the street. And it's just
the name L'Arbre Sec.
Right. It's amazing. It's just beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Is that where you had the tartare?
That is where we had the steak tartare. We actually had never had steak tartare before. Yeah. Even though we eat sushi, even though we eat carpaccio, the eating raw meat is not something that we're afraid to do, but there was something about actually the idea of just sitting down to a big plate of ground raw beef.
Yes.
that was, for me, I had always had a visceral kind of reaction to it. Mm-hmm. But no, we were like, okay, well, we're in France, we should do something that we've never done before. So we ended up having our first steak tartare, and it was so delicious that, now that's one of our stops that we have to go to every time that we're back.
My husband enjoys this. He's American born and raised, and he orders steak tartare on occasion. Well, I don't usually because I don't know, but he loves it. Yeah, yeah. When I see it, I'm like, ooh. But I've tried it, and it does taste really good.
Well, it's really good. And one of the things too is they do serve it with toast points. So, you almost make like a sandwich where, they've got the mustard or the sauce, they've got the cornichon, they've got the capers, and then, it's always served with a raw egg on top too.
Yes,
so it's
like, just to make it more salmonella friendly.
Exactly. It's like, so once you get over the idea of eating raw beef, it's like, let's put a raw egg on it as well. But, no, but it's always served with frite as well, with French fries. So it's fun.
Yeah.
And, it was really good to try something new. So that's where we had lunch. And then, for dinner, we went to this cafe on the Rue de Rivoli, and had, boeuf bourguignon and, just kind of all the classics and sat out our last evening underneath the walkway, the colonnade that, was at the Rue de Rivoli.
Very good. Yeah, the colonnades are kind of interesting looking.
They're beautiful.
You like them?
Yeah, like them a lot. It's funny because we had laughed because we had our experience with the pickpocket clown earlier in the trip, and on each one of the tables of this restaurant was this little laminated card that said, beware of the pickpockets on the Rue de Rivoli. So we're like, we actually. Honest, shouldn't say this, but we stole one and took one home. We were doing the only pickpocketing that day.
That's funny. They're probably used to that. You're probably hardly the only ones.
Exactly. If found, please return to.
Yes. David, thank you so much for coming on the show. We will do this in 2 parts because you have way too much to share with us, and it's wonderful. I love it. So thank you, and we'll talk again next week.
Okay, you got it. Talk to you soon.
Au revoir.
Au revoir.
Many thanks to listeners who donate to the show or use our Amazon or hotel booking links on joinusinfrance.com or on the show notes that appear on the podcasting app on your phone. Most new listeners find the show through a recommendation from a friend. If you're the kind of fan who drops our name here and there, bless you and thank you for your help. I hope you have a great time in France, and when you come back, consider sharing your experience and thoughts with other listeners. Drop me a line, Annie@joinusinfrance.com, if you'd like to do a trip report with me. Thank you. Au revoir. This episode is licensed under the Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Non-Derivatives International License.